Welcome to the Brain Crops podcast. I'm your host, Chelsea Myers, and my mission is to lift and bless 100 billion people to access their truth. Today is a special day because I am joined with a new friend, Jem Fuller, who I met through Jem. Multiple different people, actually. I think we have a couple of different connections. We were on a meeting together, but also have some mutual friends. And so got to talk to Jem one day, and it was just one of those conversations where you're like, wow, this is just already a really beautiful experience. So I'm so pleased to have you here today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Chelsea. I love your mission. And yes, we are connected through this growing global community of people who are in service to the greater good, and people who are really, coming from all parts of their drive to want to try and help humanity raise our level of consciousness. And so when we connected, it was just immediate. It was easy and lovely. And so for you to have me on your show and to help you in any tiny little way that I can help you on that beautiful big mission of yours is an honor. So thank you.
Yeah, well, the honor is mine, and thank you again. I would love for you, before we get into, I asked Jem before the show, I said, is it okay if we go really deep? And he said, yes. I'm super excited about that. But before we go there, could you give us just a little bit of background and share some things with our audience so we can be brought up to speed on your beautiful journey up to this point, and then we'll get more into the inner world of Jem.
Yeah, absolutely. So colorful journey, not normal standard journey. I did finish high school, but unlike most other people where I'm from, everybody else went to university, and I didn't. I took off as far as I could into the far reaches of the world and down as many back roads as I could, and I really wanted to get off the grid, and it wasn't even called off the grid back then, but yes. So I so I traveled. This is back in the days before email, even, let alone smartphones. It's funny. My now 21-year-old, when he was 18, he went traveling overseas in a gap year between high school and university, and he said to me, "Dad, what do I do when I get to a city and they don't speak English and I don't know where to go?" And I pointed to his iPhone and I said, "Mate, you've got an iPhone. It's got everything on there, everything, from maps and hotels to translations to everything." And I was remembering back in the day when I used to travel before email even. But anyway, so I traveled a lot. From the age of 18 until 32, I was either in a foreign country or earning money in a foreign country to get to another foreign country. And I was especially interested in countries that were very, very different to where I grew up. I didn't want to go and travel in places that were similar. I wanted to really explore the globe and humanity and culture and adventure and all that sort of stuff. And then when I got married and became a dad in my early 30s, I got a job, and I actually ended up putting on a shirt and tie, which my friends and family at the time were like, "What have you done with Jem? Where's he gone?" Because I was the opposite of that. I was very, very alternative. I was dreadlocked and tattooed and barefoot for many, many years. Anyway, so I did that corporate thing for a while, 8 years, and then had my beautiful midlife awakening, which most people call a midlife crisis. Lost everything. We can talk more about that. Lost the job, lost my marriage, lost my house, lost myself, and then had the opportunity to rebuild and redesign and replenish my relationship with self first, and then with life around me, including my children and so on. And so for the last 13 years now, I've been on this beautiful journey of self-love and then love for life and service, and have built my coaching practice over the last 13 years. So I coach executives, and my beautiful partner, Talia, who came into my life after I'd done the work. We're a blended family. So between us, we've got a 21-year-old, a 19-year-old, 18 and 15-year-old kids, young adults. We run beautiful retreats together in the Himalayan mountains in India and in Bali and here in Australia. She runs her own beautiful village here that she's created, which is Pilates and yoga and fitness and well-being for women. So she runs a women's community. And I coach and have online courses and run retreats. And And most recently, we've just incorporated our nonprofit, which is called the Center of Love. And we're raising money to build a nonprofit meditation retreat center in the Himalayan mountains in India on some land that we've been given by our family over there. So there's me in a nutshell.
Wow. And it's such a beautiful story. So you mentioned that you wanted to spend time far away from where you grew up. Where did you grow up, and where did you experience outside of that?
So I was born in a town in Holland, in the Netherlands, called Haarlem, which was the original Harlem before Harlem in New York. So I was born in the Netherlands. My dad was from England. My mum was from Australia. We lived in England for a year, and then we moved to Melbourne in Australia. And so I grew up in Melbourne, and I grew up, so it was middle class suburban Australian city,
Mm-hmm.
about as kind of standard as you could get. But growing up, because my dad was international, he'd worked all around the world and had friends all around the world. So when I was growing up, I was lucky enough as a kid to be taken on a few world trips. And so I knew there was a big wide world out there. And so I had travel was already in me, the curiosity to go and see. And so when I was 18, I did what most Australian 18-year-olds do if they're going traveling. They go to London because it was easy for us to get a visa in London, and you go and work in London and earn some money. And then Europe is right on your doorstep. So traveling around Europe then, but
Right.
then pretty quickly my curiosity was much more drawn to places like Nepal and India, and then Pakistan, China, Tibet, Bangladesh, and then all through Southeast Asia, Thailand, Laos, Indonesia, all through there as well, and parts of the Middle East. Places that were really, like I said, places that were really different. And I also didn't want to be a tourist. I didn't want to, get off a tour bus with a camera like every other
Mm-hmm.
tourist. To me, that felt, I don't know, it just felt a bit disrespectful. I wanted to be known as a traveler. If anyone asked me what I was doing, I said I'm traveling, not I'm not a tourist. And I would spend at least a month in a village. If I found a village that I was interested in staying in, I'd find a room somewhere in a guest house or something, and I would stay for about a month at least, so that I could start to develop relationships with the locals and learn some of the local language. And I used to cook my own food a lot, so I'd be going into the market and buying my vegetables in the marketplace, and um, and really, really having time to breathe into the rhythm and the cycles of the locals, to feel the culture. And so, yeah, I was just really fascinated in doing that. And I did that for a long time.
It's really beautiful. Would you describe it as a land pull, like I need to be in this part of the world, or was it like you had an interest in one place and that place led you to another place? How would you describe that chain of traveling events?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a combination. I was first drawn to the India subcontinent because of Mount Everest. I just wanted to go to Mount Everest, which is in Nepal, right? So I went to Nepal. And then after a month in Nepal, I was just on the border of India, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just pop over the border down into this big, massive country, India, and see what it's like. And I went down in there, down into India, and I fell in love with it. I ended up staying 3 months that time, and I just kept getting drawn back to India. And because I was in India for, used to have a 6 month visa, and when your visa ran out, you'd have to pop over into Pakistan or Sri Lanka or somewhere to get your another visa, so you could come back into India again. So I did that for a while, and so going to Pakistan really was initially a visa run to go and get a visa, but oh wow, I fell in love with North Pakistan. It
Oh,
was
really?
just stunning. Oh, just incredible. And I was there. I was in North Pakistan in 1998. In fact, it's an interesting story. I was in the Northwestern Frontier Province, it used to be called, which was kind of like this tribal area that was run by Mujahideen. So the Pakistan government weren't allowed in there. They didn't have any they didn't run it. and
Mm-hmm.
the Afghani, so it was on the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan, and the Afghanistan government weren't allowed in there either. So no military or anything were allowed in there. It was all tribal law. And because it was tribal law, it was a big producer of opium, so heroin, and also gun smuggling and hashish and things that were illegal. And I'd got in there in disguise, like disguised as a Pakistani guy, so that I could go in and have a look. I paid some guy to take me in there. Anyway, I'd been in there, came out safely, and then hitchhiked up into the northwest of Pakistan to the Kailash valleys. And literally 2 weeks after I'd been in the northwestern frontier province, the American government sent cruise missiles in there to try and kill Osama bin Laden. Now, this is back in 1998. So this was
Mm-hmm.
before 9/11, right?
Right.
And it was in the time when the American embassy in Africa, in one of the African countries, had been bombed, and Osama bin Laden claimed responsibility. So the American government at the time, and it was President Bush, I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves me correctly, was trying to kill Osama bin Laden back then. And they sent cruise missiles into where I'd just been 2 weeks before.
Oh my
And I had no
goodness.
idea because I wasn't watching the news or anything. And then I was up in northern Pakistan sitting on a bus with next to a university student. And it was actually a really beautiful connection. We were exploring our differences, and he was devout Muslim, and I was atheist. I'd grown up as a Christian. Atheist is a strong word. I'm not an atheist. I'm very spiritual. I just don't subscribe to one particular religion. And we were talking, and this Pakistani kid said to me, Jem, if we cut your skin here, and then he pointed to his own arm and he said, and if we cut my skin here, he said, we have the same color blood. You and me, we're the same, he said. Right? So he drew this beautiful connection that we're both humans. In that moment, we had this spiritual experience. We were looking into each other's eyes, and the rest of the bus and the people around us kind of disappeared, and it was just me and him in that moment. We had a really beautiful spiritual soul-to-soul connection in that moment where we saw each other through all the differences, and then we could explore the differences beautifully together and respectfully. He was a beautiful young man. And then anyway, he was showing me the front page of the newspaper, and on the front page of the newspaper, he translated from Urdu into English for me, and it said, jihad has been declared. That's when they declared jihad. That's when they said, right, we're going to pay you back for this. And so when 9/11 happened, I was in Barcelona in Spain when 9/11 happened a few years later. And I was shocked, obviously, as the whole world was, but I also wasn't surprised. I was like, wow, that's what they've been planning, So anyway, that's a travel story for you. But yeah, I think at the heart of that story, the biggest learning or remembering for me is that no matter how different people appear from you, especially if it's the color of skin, which is just such a superficial difference. But
Right.
no matter how someone appears differently from you, we're all actually the same deep down inside. We have the same color blood. We all need air and water. We all need food and shelter. We all love our children. We all grieve the death of a loved one. We all have these deep, deep human commonalities. And I think that that's where, in times where the algorithms and the political agenda is trying to create divide, successfully creating divide, you're either red or blue, you're either pro vax or anti vax, you're either pro life or pro choice, you're either this or that, and they're putting everyone against each other, right? Now more than ever before, as people, as individuals, we need to see someone who superficially seems different and just peel back a few layers and connect on that human, spiritual, beautiful level of love. And then we can respectfully explore our differences together.
Absolutely. And, you used a really beautiful word there. You said connect, which I was
Mm.
already thinking along the lines of how very interconnected we all are, anyways, not just if you follow the family tree somewhere along the line, we're, 10th cousins. That's not even what I mean. I'm saying, what if it's much deeper than that and much more connected than that? And I was just talking to somebody else about this, and it was like, if we approached everything that way, like, let's just pretend for a second that you and I are actually very connected. Would I do something to you that I wouldn't do to me? Or would I do something to you that I
Mm,
wouldn't do to my son or my husband or my brother? Because if the
mm,
answer is
mm.
no, then why are we getting, road rage on the highway, for example, or
Yeah,
angry with our neighbor or our, our in-law or whatever it is, whatever the thing is, it just kind
yeah,
of repositions and gives us the opportunity to look at things, not just from black and white, like you were describing, but like as if it was multifaceted, and just pivot just a little bit to see it from a completely different angle. And in that
yeah.
light, just so many different things can be illuminated. But what I
I
loved
love.
also about your story was you're having this deep connection with a university student on a bus, and presumably with all of your travels, you have some deep questions in your heart as well. I'm assuming that there was a lot of personal growth that took place in these journeys. Can you tell me a little bit about what it was you were seeking?
Mm. Yeah, I think at a deep level, I was seeking to answer the biggest questions that a lot of people have. Who am I beneath all of the layers of the roles that we play? Who am I? And why am I here? What's the meaning of life? Is there any point to it? And I followed those questions to those questions can take you in different directions. You can end up with a very nihilistic point of view of there's no point and I don't matter. Um, and then and if you really subscribe to that and stick with that, then be interested in the quality of life you're experiencing then, right? Because you can quite easily convince yourself that there's no point to anything. The universe is just expanding, and we just happen to be here, um, and I don't matter because there's been billions and billions of other people, and in a very short space of time, humanity probably won't be here anyway, right? So you could easily convince yourself of that, but if you subscribe to that and live your day-to-day life with those answers to those questions, what's the quality of your life like? What's your experience like each day? How happy are you? How joyful are you? How um, motivated are you to serve, to try and contribute and make something a little bit better for someone, or not, right? So I explored it in that direction. I explored it in every direction I could, and the question of who am I, for me, when you go deeper and deeper and deeper into that question, it becomes more, what am I? Because the who am I is an identification, and this sense of identity is a necessary illusion, but it's an illusion, right? And beneath the layers of I'm, my mother and father's son, and I'm my brother and sister's brother, and I'm my children's dad, beneath the layers of identification is consciousness, and consciousness is a shared state. It's the constant state that is throughout your whole life. The only thing that is always there is consciousness. When you peel back the layers of identification, underneath it is this beautiful consciousness, which you and I are the same. This is where we are. So when you come down to what am I, it's I am an expression of consciousness, and consciousness is all beneath everything. And so you and I are the same thing. We're just different expressions of the same thing. So it really comes to this beautiful spiritual truth that we are all of the same greater system. We are all of the same fundamental energy source. And people have called it God, which is fine. People call it the universe or source or whatever you want to call it, but it's undeniably there. We are all of the same stuff. And I find this interesting as well, Chelsea, like the physical parts that are your body, the cells, the atoms and the cells, they change, right? They recycle. Over your lifetime, if you live to old age, your body recycles 7 times. So you are 7 times over Not one single part of you is physically the same as it was when you were born. Not one cell is the same cell. They've all reproduced, right? So you're not your physical body. You're the energy source, the consciousness that is beneath all of the layers of everything. And so, and that source is all pervasive. It's through everything. So you and I are very much a family.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Absolutely agreed. Okay, so you went on this beautiful journey and started gaining answers to these questions that were in your heart. And then, if I understood and heard correctly, then you transitioned from world traveler to now corporate leader to then consciousness coach. So, when did you first recognize that all of the inner journey that you had done could become a path of service to other people?
Well, first I had to forget it all, and not all of it, but I had to forget it and lose myself in the 3D world, in the rat race. I had to lose myself in that, and I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't think, right now I'm going to go and lose myself. my
Right.
my intentions were good. I became a dad and I had kids, and I was like, wow, I've got to put food on the table and I've got to put a roof over their heads.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 32 years old, and I didn't have a career, and I didn't have any qualifications, and I hadn't had a job for more than 12 months. I mean, my jobs up until 32, my jobs had been fire dancer, tattooist, motorcycle courier, volunteer in third world countries, actor, singer, songwriter. I didn't have a
Yeah.
career. And so when I had these kids, I was like, wow, I've got to actually get a steady job so I can create some stability for my family. And so I got a steady job. And then once I had the job, I'm like, right, I've got to be successful in this job because I need to earn more money so that we can build a house. So there I go, off down that track of what our Western capitalist cultures teach us that we should do. Get the best job you can get, and then be as successful as possible, and get a promotion, climb the ladder, earn more money, build your house. That's what you do, right? And so, funnily enough, like, I look back now and it's ironic. It's funny, that I spent up until I was 32 introspection, contemplation, meditation, kind of hippie in a way, living around the world, seeking the truth to life. And then I went, right, now I've got to get a job, and I put a shirt and tie on and went and got lost in that world. And I over the years, I lost my way with my core values and my spirituality. I was successful in the corporate world. I climbed the ladder. I earned a lot of money, but I moved away from my values. And to numb the pain, not pain, but to numb the experience, I was drinking too much alcohol at the end of every day and working too hard. Like, I'd get the kids to sleep and then open my laptop again and work and work and work and travel and travel and work and party hard because you're working so hard. And so my marriage suffered. That old story, you hear this story time and time again. So my marriage
Mm-hmm.
got worse and worse and worse. I was not living in my integrity. I was not a version of myself that I would be proud of. I was driven in that corporate world. As a senior leader, you are driven to grow profit month on month, quarter on quarter, year on year. If you're not growing profit, then you're out, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so, yeah, I lost my way. I really did. And that affected me in deeply personal ways. And so I had to hit rock bottom. I really got to the as far down as I could get in terms of my self-worth and the blanket of shame that I was, under. And um, yeah, I got completely lost, and I almost gave up, but didn't. So yeah.
Well, thank goodness that you didn't, first of all. And it's such a relatable story. I think that, there are a lot of visionaries and entrepreneurs that are in our audience today. And um, it's almost something that it's less common to not hear about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
We go through that. I remember when I was building my second company, and I was on the phone with a family member, and she was like, "You're living the life of your dreams," and I wanted to climb through the phone and strangle her. I'm like, "This is not the life of my dreams. This is like my marriage is about to fail. I don't care where I live or how much money I have. I don't even know how I'm going to do tomorrow." And
Yeah.
so I definitely do relate to what you're saying, and it's like I said, I'm just so grateful that you were able to get through that. But it's that, you know, success or money or stuff, it can sometimes be an amplifier of whatever you are on your way
Mm.
to developing them and acquiring them and creating them. You're more of that when you have more of them.
Mm.
And so I'm curious to know from you, I know you work with a lot of high achievers now
Mm.
on redefining strength and vulnerability. So what is your perspective on alignment, and how do we, we both have kids in the same age range as well. So one of my questions is, how do we do this for ourselves, redefine our own inner alignment, but then also raise the next generation so that they are empowered, but not
Mm.
operating from that struggle or that performance metric?
Mm. I think I think really our kids learn from way more. They learn from what we do, not what we say.
Yeah.
If you are saying to your kids, "Hey, the best way is this way," but you're not living that way, not only is there no integrity in that, but they're more likely to subconsciously end up um, copying or emulating what they see you
Mm-hmm.
do on a day-to-day basis rather than what you tell them that they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had one of those beautiful parenting moments just recently. One of those moments where you're like, "Oh, I just want to bottle that and keep that." That was just
Yeah.
so lovely, because there's plenty of the opposite. There's plenty of parenting moments where you're like, "No," but
Mm-hmm.
I had one of those that you just want to keep forever. And it was my 21-year-old, and we were cooking in the kitchen together, cooking dinner together. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, "Dad, I'm so proud of you." And I said, "Oh, that's lovely." And he said, "No, no, 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 no. I mean, like, I look up to you more than anyone else in the whole world."
Wow.
And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yep. I want to be just like you." And I think I cried, and he
I
gave me a
think I'm
big
going
hug.
to.
Yeah. Yeah. And in that moment, everything was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was okay, and I'm still on a mission. I think I always will be, but I'm still on a mission. My work is far from done. I'll be doing this until the day I pass through to the other side. The other side is a funny thing to say. That's a whole other conversation. But until I die, the day I die, I'll be doing the work I do because it's why I'm here, and I've got millions more people to help. So I don't feel like my work is done at all, anywhere near it. But he just said to me, "Dad, just the way you are, I want to be like you." And yeah, it was beautiful. So you have those moments as parents and you're like, "Oh, some things have worked." And I think what it was when he was in his last year of high school, he said to me, "Dad, should I be trying to get into university to go and get a degree where I think that I'll have the most security and earn the best money? Or should I be trying to get into the degree of what I love?" And that's a no-brainer for me. I'm like, "You definitely
Right.
follow what you love, 100%."
Yes.
He goes, "Yeah, but what if I struggle to earn money?" I said, "You just trust. If you are following your passion and what you love, and it does good for others, and you're using some of your the stuff that you're good at, that you love to do, you
Mm-hmm.
definitely, that's your pathway. That's your way forward." So yeah, I feel like that's the right advice to give a kid. I don't know.
I think it's the perfect advice to give a kid. Absolutely. And it's really interesting. I was recording a podcast earlier today with a retired financial advisor that helps people create cash flow. Um, and laced with a lot of consciousness. And one of the things we were talking about that I heard him say was, that there's basically no amount of money or no, zip code that you live in or lifestyle that you may live that's going to answer those deep, important questions you talked about earlier, or that's going to solve for a gap in connection to self and source, or whatever your definition is. And as I was listening and participating in that conversation, I was asking myself, and I'm curious to know your opinion on this, but I was asking myself, those are things we all hear, and I'm not sure if there's a way to fully convert to the truth of it unless you experience it, unless you actually get where you're going and realize that it's not the location, the place, the thing that you have that can make you feel anything. Those are frequency choices. Those are energetics behind the scenes. What are your thoughts? Is it possible for someone to really grasp the truth of things cannot answer soul level energetic inquiries?
I think you're right. I think you can only, I use the word grok meaning get it on every level of your being, on every vibrational level. To grok something is to fully get it. I think you can only grok something by experiencing it, or experiencing a taste into a deeper taste, and following those breadcrumbs. You can read all the books in the world, but if you haven't experienced a moment of oneness where the illusion of self dissipates, it's hard to describe what that's like. Words can only fall short. I've tried to describe that experience in my books, in my songs, in my poetry, in my conversations, and it always falls short. It's like trying to capture, just say you're standing on a mountain and there's a forest in front of you and it's a sunny day and the sun is shining into the leaves of the trees, and there's millions of different colors of green, and the breeze is gently blowing the leaves, so there's all of this movement, and you can almost see waves of the breeze through the trees, like waves moving through the canopy of the trees, and there's all the sounds of all the different birds and insects and life, and you can feel the sun on your skin, like that experience. And then you pull out your iPhone to take a photo of this beautiful scene. And the minute you try and snap it into a photo, you look at the photo and you go, oh, that doesn't come even close to the conscious experience I was having in that moment. That's what it's like, trying to capture an experience, a spiritual experience, and put it into words. That's what it's like trying to understand what a spiritual experience is like by only reading a book. You can't get it. You can't. So the only way, back to your point, I think the only way to experience and get something on this profound level is to experience it.
Yes. So when you talk about, you've mentioned that conversation with the gentleman on the bus and this beautiful connection with your son the other night. In a world full of noise, how do we either return to or learn to create conscious communication? And why do you feel like that matters more than ever, whether it's leadership or parenting or socializing? Why does that matter?
I'll start with the last part of your question first. Why does it matter? We only exist in relationship, right? Relationship with self, with life, with others, in relationship. And the quality of our life is directly correlated to the quality of our relationships. How good your life is. At the end of your days, when you're kicking back in your rocking chair on your porch and the grandkids are running around, and maybe there's even some great grandkids if you're lucky enough. And one of your grandkids comes up to you and says, Grandma Chelsea, how was your life? Right? The answer to that question will be directly correlated to how good your relationships are. Not how big your house was, not if you had a boat or a car or a fancy this or a fancy that, not how much money's in the bank, none of that stuff. None of it matters. And I'm not just saying this, we know this from doing research, extensive research on ourselves. There's studies that have gone on for years and years and years, decades. And the most resounding finding is that the quality of our life is directly correlated to the quality of our relationships. And our relationships, the quality of them, depends on the quality of our communication, because our communication is the understanding. It's the commune. What do we have in common? Right? That's communication. So it's ultimately important. The quality of your life depends on the quality of your communication. So that's the answer to that part of the question. And then the first part you asked, how can we get better at that, being more conscious in that? And there's quite a few things, and I go into them in my book, but the primary fundamental practice, and if you're not doing it already, you can start it today, is a practice of mindfulness, and particularly mindfulness meditation. So mindfulness is quite simply an attention to the present moment. That's all it is. When you're being mindful in a moment, you are bringing your attention to that present moment. You're not thinking about yesterday. You're not thinking about what you're cooking for dinner tonight. You're thinking about this moment right now, and anything that you can notice in this present moment can be an object of your observation. So any sounds that you can hear in this moment, any sights, any sensations, any thoughts even, you can notice them. They can be something that you can observe. So this is a practice of mindfulness. Meditation is when you're sitting still and practicing just noticing the present moment. But you can also integrate mindfulness into that which you are ordinarily doing anyway. You can mindfully brush your teeth. You can mindfully drive your car. You can mindfully sip water. That just means that when you're sipping the water, you're taking all of your attention to the experience of sipping the water. And a nice little fringe benefit, ordinary experiences become extraordinary. Like sipping water, when you pay all of your attention to that process of that cool water going into your mouth and then going down your throat, it's exquisite. It's like, oh, wow, that was really enjoyable. Right?
Yes.
So an ordinary experience becomes extraordinary, right? So then you can bring this into moments of your life whenever you remember to do it. Your life can become this string of extraordinary moments. Right? So you have this extraordinary life, and you didn't actually even do anything extraordinary. You just paid attention. And so then you can start to bring mindfulness into your communication, your listening. When someone's sharing something with you, that you give them all of you. And that is extraordinary. Your relationships go through the roof. If you asked my partner, Talia, what is one of her favorite things about being in relationship with me, I know what she'll tell you. She'll tell you that Jem is really good at being present. And when we're together, he's not anywhere else. He's not distracted. And when I'm talking and saying something, he is 100% there with me. That's what she'll tell you. And you can develop this ability, right? So you develop this ability by practicing mindfulness. That's the fundamental first thing I would say. The second thing I would say, which is a good thing to practice, start doing more and more and more. And you mentioned this earlier in I think maybe before we were recording, you said, how do we get better at not reacting in an emotional moment in communication, and how do we actually respond rather than react? There's a thing to practice. Pause. Practice pausing. Get better at pausing. So something happens, maybe you even read something on social, you see something on social media and you're about to react. Pause. Someone says something and you get triggered and you're about to react. Pause. Take some breaths, right? People say pause and take a deep breath. I say pause and take 5 deep breaths. I've been saying that for a long time, and I think there's a woman, Mel Robbins, who does the take 5 thing as well. It works. Yeah. Pause and take some deep breaths. Notice what you can notice. Just notice. Notice how you were about to react. usually defensively, or, like you're trying to defend a point of view,
Mhm.
just notice how you're about to react, pause, consider alternative ways to respond. Now, this doesn't always mean that you won't say what you were going to say, but it just takes the defensive, offensive sting out of it, you know, and you get better at it.
Mhm.
We've got just less to defend. We get so defensive over our point of view, which I understand, because our point of view quite often is enmeshed with our sense of identity, and our ego wants to defend itself, so it's defending its sense of identity. And if you have an ideology like, I am pro-choice, say, if that's your ideology, I'm pro-choice, and you meet someone at a dinner party and they're pro-life, and they state their argument very, very strongly at the dinner table, and you find yourself wanting to lean in and go, that is not the way it should be, and you start coming up with examples. And what about a 14-year-old girl who was raped, and blah, 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 and you're telling me blah, 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 and you're off on your blah, right? Just pause, breathe. You're not in danger. Your life's not in danger. Your ego thinks that there's a lion coming to get you, and you've got to actually save your life. That's what your ego thinks. It's like life and
Mhm.
death. There's a lion that's about to eat me. Pause. You're actually not in danger right now. You're at a dinner party and someone's got a different point of view. Breathe.
Right.
Now, if you want to engage in the conversation, you can. You just don't need to do it so aggressively. you know.
Right. Yes. And that's, I actually heard in combination two things that you said. In the first instance, when you were talking about conscious communication, you talked about listening and being really present in that moment. And um, years ago, when I had someone mentor me on being a really good listener, I've always been a good listener, but what I didn't know was that you don't always have to listen to respond. And depending
Mm.
on your life experience, your childhood, what you've lived through, you may be like I was, always in preparation mode, because no, there isn't a lion, but there actually may be some attack on you, or there actually may be some critique, or there actually may be, you may perceive that there's something that you need to protect.
Mm.
But I was taught, actually, you could just listen for the sake of listening. And
Yeah.
then it got to the point where it was like, I had to reel it in, because I was like, oh, I don't actually ever have to respond. This is really peaceful. But, you're right. Participation, being in those relationships
yeah.
is still important. So learning how, to
Yeah.
your point, to select the energy that you want to operate from, and then
Yeah.
choose, okay, does Chelsea in this energy respond to this? And if so, how? I heard this talk
Yeah.
recently, and this lady had this really great three prong question you can ask yourself. Does this need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? And does it need to be said by me right now? And I thought,
Ah,
that alone could take place in that pause if you
yes.
had an idea that you wanted to share.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Another nice little question to ask yourself is, what would love do or say right now?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
be really open to that answer, because, you
Yeah.
know, love for
Yeah.
whom then? And it would be love
Mm.
overall, right?
For the greater good.
Uh,
Yeah. Love for
yes.
the greater good. Yeah. It's interesting too, that you were saying, about those questions that she asked, and how you got to a point where you were like, oh, I don't even need to respond. I can just listen. I've really been curious, and it'll be a practice forever. You don't arrive, but I've been practicing becoming less and less defensive, and
Mm-hmm.
that I don't need to defend or protect anything. Now, just to caveat this conversation, I'm not talking about physical danger.
Right.
Right? So physical danger, yes, that exists. And if someone's coming to physically hurt you, then you need to protect yourself. And yep, I get that. Just
Right.
putting it to the side. I'm just talking about verbal.
Mm-hmm.
Verbal. The better you get at being unaffected by anything that anyone says, the less affected you are, the less you need to defend. You don't need to protect or defend. I can go into any situation, almost getting better at it, not any, but most situations, completely open heartedly and just unconditionally love the other person and not get hurt. Because one, it's not my love that I'm giving them, it's universal love that's coming through me as a conduit. So, and that's infinite and doesn't run out. So that's, they can take as much of it as they want. It doesn't drain me. But also, if they say something hurtful, I don't get hurt by it. So I don't need to put walls up. I can actually be
Mm-hmm.
more open-hearted. The less affected you are by people, or the better you get at choosing when to allow someone to affect you,
Mm-hmm.
the better you get at choosing when, then the less you need to protect or defend. So I don't have to have walls up anymore. And it's a really beautiful way of being. It's just, I don't know. It's a really beautiful way of being. Someone could come up to me and shout, aggressively shout all the abuse in the world. I don't feel abused.
Mm-hmm.
I get an
It's a
indication of
beautiful
who
place
they
to
are.
be.
Yeah, I see them and I'm like, wow, that's the energy that you're vibrating in, and that's your life right now.
Right.
And I feel for them, but I don't feel abused. That's my choice.
Right.
you know so this whole movement that's been going on, and I think it's running its course, but this whole thing of, you're not allowed to use this word, or you're not allowed to say this, or you're not allowed to say that because I'll be offended. I'm like, wow, you're disempowering yourself.
Right.
You're disempowering yourself. If the quality of your life is in everybody else's hands, and everyone else has to follow these rules, otherwise you'll be living a life where you feel offended all the time. Oh wow, I really feel for you, because that's such a victim mindset.
Right.
How about you say to others, you do you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Speak the way you want to speak. Call me whatever you want to call me. I don't mind. I really don't mind. I will choose whether to be offended or not, right? And I'm going to work on being unoffendable. I'm working on being unoffendable. You
I
can
love
call me whatever
this.
you want, and I
Yeah.
will not be
Yeah.
offended. I promise you. And I'll probably still exercise unconditional capital L love for you. you know,
Yes. And it's actually a really beautiful place to play because I have this phrase that everything is rigged in my favor. And it came to me once many years ago. And it was one of those things where when something comes to you and you're like, I really like that and I really want that to be true. So I played with it and I rolled it around and applied it in all these different situations. And now I have a journal with it inscribed on it because my
I
husband
love
just
it.
loves that I live that way. But here's the beautiful
Yeah.
thing about what you're describing. If someone comes at you and displays where they're at energetically, where they're, their level of
Mm,
tolerance, their level of
mm,
love, that they're only ever telling us about themselves, right? When they act how they act, it
mm,
can be informative because there are
mm.
times where, though unaffected and not responding perhaps the way someone might expect or be hoping for me to respond, I am able to hear and say, actually, I see why you think that, or I can see that perspective.
Mm.
Maybe that is something I need to work on or through.
Yeah.
Said differently, that, regardless of the presentation, it actually can still be benefit to us if we're willing to
Yeah.
allow everything to be a teacher or a reflection in some way
I
that
love
can
that.
be a benefit.
I love that. Yeah, that's super cool. That's super cool. In every moment there, depending on your perspective, there can be an opportunity for your own evolution, your own expansion into your potential, your own growth. Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Jem, I want to check on time because we're at about time, but how are you doing?
I'm good. So I just checked. You might have noticed I just quickly wasn't present with you for a second because I had to check my
Okay.
calendar and see if I has it. And
Okay.
I checked, and I'm good. I've got time,
You're
so
good.
we can
Okay, so I've
relax.
got a
We
few
can
more
relax.
questions. Okay,
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
got a
yeah.
few more questions then before we wrap up, and otherwise I was going to suggest we do a part two. But okay, so we're talking about lots of uncomfortable things that people may be going through, how they can potentially reposition or pivot their both their internal dialogue and then those conversations that we're having to be in relationship with each other. And we're really talking about breakdowns and breakthroughs. And so let's say somebody listening is currently in the dark and cannot see where the struggle is leading them. What do you say to that person?
Hmm. In the breakdown, um, try and allow if you're experiencing a broken heart, allow your heart to be broken open
Mm.
rather than broken closed. I know that might sound a little bit conceptual, but just that's the concept to begin with. And I would start in those moments, and because I've been there, I would start in those moments of despair. I would start to cultivate each day through language um, a reparation, so a repairing or a reparation, a replenishing, a remembering of the quality of relationship with self first. So you've got to start with a gentle self love. When it all seems lost and it all seems um, that, that there's no way out,
Mhm.
to trust that the next step will appear in front of you, you got to start with your self love, your self trust will develop over time. Self love, unconditional. And now I'm going to get practical. What
Yeah.
people go, well, how do I do that, Jem? Well, it can be as simple as when you wake up in the morning, before you do anything else in your day, you have a little note on your bedside table, and you get that little note, and it's just got 3 sentences like, like to me, it would be, Jem, I love you, or I love me, however you want to word it. Jem, I love you. Jem, you are worthy of love. Jem, you got this, right? Just, and read it out loud. Read it out loud 10 times. The more you say it out loud, the more the neurons are firing together. And what you're doing is you're actually brainwashing yourself. Because when these neurons fire together over time, they become little well-worn neural highways in your brain, and they start to fire automatically. You actually start to believe what you've been saying over and over again. So over the course of time, when you read out loud every morning, and then the next step, when you feel okay to do this, and it's uncomfortable if you've never done mirror work, it's uncomfortable. But after you finish brushing your teeth in the morning or in the night, just look yourself in the mirror, look in your eyes, and say, hey, I love you.
Mm.
You're worthy of love. You got this. I believe in you. Just say it. It feels weird. Say it over and over and over again. And if you do this, gradually you'll start to um, have what you need to have to take those small action steps towards moving out of the darkness, if that makes sense.
That is so beautiful. Yes. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, the mirror work for me was, I noticed when I first learned of it, when I went to do it and I made eye contact with myself. You know, I'm a woman. I've been doing my makeup since I was an early teenager, but consciously making that eye contact with the intention of communicating and connecting,
Mm,
it was such
mm.
a different experience than I
Yeah.
expected it to be. And it's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, yeah,
Highly
same.
recommend
I love
what
it
you're
too.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it can feel a little funny, but is absolutely effective. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah,
When
you're welcome.
you are working with people who are truly embodying conscious living, what do they all have in common and what are they not afraid to face? Or even if they're afraid, they do face.
Mm. Yeah, that they can feel the fear and do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think people who are really conscious, whether they call themselves spiritual or not, they're very spiritual, because if you are conscious, if you practice going through life as much as possible as consciousness, as consciousness having an embodied experience, then you realize that everything is impermanent apart from the consciousness part. Everything else, your body is always changing, your thoughts are always changing. If you allow the river to flow, every emotion you experience comes and goes. It's only if you try and block the river, which means you're not being conscious, and you identify with and stay stuck in and try and hold on to something, then it gets stuck and it's hard for it to flow. But if you let go and practice awareness, consciousness, just noticing and being aware, then the river flows and everything comes and goes. So there's an impermanence, and when we surrender to that, that's freeing. That's where we get sayings like, "This too shall pass," if you let it. So that means that when you're in a situation that's not great or not enjoyable, or it's unpleasant, and you're like, "Oh, this isn't great," when you
Mm-hmm.
let go and breathe into consciousness, you'll let it flow and it will pass. So people I know who are very conscious, they don't spend much time in fear or worry, because they know that everything will come and go.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember early on when I very first started the podcast, I was interviewing this super successful entrepreneur, and he said something that I think my question was along the lines of, "Wow, what you're doing is really bold, and I can see how that might affect large masses of people. They might have a lot to say about that. What are your thoughts?" And he was like, "Chelsea, we're entrepreneurs. We don't have time to be worried about what other people think about what we're doing." And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that was really good coaching right on the spot for everyone to hear." I think we even were recording live that day, but it was great advice. So I love what
Awesome.
you're
It is great
saying there.
advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
Um,
look, what other people think of you is not your business. It's not your business what other people think of you. It's your business of how you show up. That's all. You know, if you think other people should respect you, wow, you're in trouble, because there's a lot of people out there and they're not all going to respect you. you know. Or
right.
if you think that
Right.
other people should be honest with you, then you're in trouble, because there's a lot of dishonest
Mm-hmm.
people out there. So if respect is important to you, be respectful.
Mm-hmm.
If trust is important to you, be trustworthy, with no expectation on whether other people pick that up or not. That's your business. you know.
Right. Yes. Yes. And Jem, you talk about legacy. So I'm curious to know how your definition of legacy has evolved over the years and what it means to you now.
Mm. Yeah, legacy to me now um, certainly doesn't mean anything to do with Jem Fuller,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's every chance that I'll be forgotten. My name will be forgotten, right? Even by loved ones. I love this. I heard this once. So, Chelsea, and to your listeners, do you know the names of your 4 grandparents?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know the names of your 8 great grandparents?
Not all of them.
No, neither do I, neither do most people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, your grandkids, right? You've got kids about the same age as me, young adults, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Your grandkids, their kids won't know who you were. They won't know who you were, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gone. And here's another one. The person who invented penicillin, do you know their name?
Is
I
it not
don't
penicillin? No.
know. Penicillin, no. The name of the person is
Okay.
not penicillin. I don't know their name. They
Yeah.
created penicillin. Penicillin changed the course of human history and health and well-being, and then they're forgotten. So
Mm-hmm.
I know what legacy is not. Legacy is not you, your ego, your identity, your name, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
not what it is. Legacy is the positive impact that you've had on other people that will continue like ripples becoming maybe waves of positive effect, right? That's legacy. So if you and legacy doesn't need to be saving the world. Not everyone wants to get out there and change humanity. You might just want to leave the legacy of being the best parent you can be. And that then has allowed your children to become the best version of them that they can be, and so on and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be legacy. I know also in the 3D world, um, a lot of families, wealthy families, think about their legacy in terms of setting up the future generations financially,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there's crazy, crazy percentages of kids who inherit wealth who lose it all.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, my question to those families that I work with is yes, you can do what you can do to try and help preserve the financial legacy, right? But how are you going to do that? By focusing on the quality of your relationships, by
Mm-hmm.
focusing on being the person that you want to emulate for those kids to be able to step into responsibility as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the legacy really should be built, in the quality of our relationships, in the quality of our children being in an environment of education, not where they're being told what to do, but where they're living in an environment where they're emulating responsibility and emulating awareness and emulating these
Yes.
these things. That's legacy, because the money will either disappear or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think we need to look deeper than money for legacy.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. I actually know more and more people that are either teaching, giving it away, but teaching their children to build, or
Mm,
putting interesting or creative is maybe a better word, creative stipulations on how it will be allocated, so that the children still have the opportunity to go through that
mm,
creative process to grow and
mm,
develop, and then have access. And I think that there's just, there's lots of things to do, but what I'm hearing you say is allow your definition of wealth to include relationships, emotional
mm,
health, connection,
mm,
those types of
mm.
things. And I think that's just so
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
So, one final question for you, unless you have something else that you wanted to insert into our conversation before we wrap up. No? All
No.
right. If someone listening could walk away with one gem from Jem today, a, a sentence or a knowing that they can carry in their pocket, and you've shared so many of them, but what would you want that one thing to be?
I would want them to know and come back to reality
Mm.
that you are exactly who you're supposed to be in this moment. You made it. You made it to exactly where you're supposed to be and who you're supposed to be in this moment. I'm not talking about the future. You'll keep evolving, changing, growing, learning. But right now, if you just stop to smell the roses, you can know that you are exactly enough of everything to be who you should be, which is you. And you're in exactly the place where you're supposed to be, because there you are. So well done. You made it.
It's so beautiful. Thank you, Jem. This has been a true pleasure of mine, and I know it's going to be very impactful for all of our listeners. If they want to find out more about you, you have a beautiful website. It's jemfuller.com. Is that where you'd send people?
I would send them there, and I would also send them to Meaning on the Mountain, meaning as in the meaning of life,
Okay.
meaningonthemountain.com.au. That's our Himalaya retreat page, which is also beautiful, and I love it.
Beautiful. Okay, we'll put those in the show notes as well. So beautiful to have you here today. Thank you for sharing your heart with us.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Chelsea.
I appreciate you joining me for today's episode. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit dentallife.coach for access to additional coaching tools, as well as more episodes to help you create the life you truly desire.